Tamara, and this is Anything is Possible. He's kind of scared about this coronavirus thing and shortages of food, and so I decided I would do a video on how to start seeds for your own summer garden. There's a lot of things you can grow that'll provide you tons of food, and it's really not that hard to do. It's an absolutely gorgeous sunny afternoon today, and I've gotten out a little bit and I'm doing a little bit of gardening after work. The days are longer and it's just beautiful and warm. They say it's the earliest spring since sometime in the late 1800s, which is not necessarily good for us here because we haven't had enough rain, and I live in a very high fire area. So it may be kind of a rough summer, but boy, was it a beautiful day. All the gloom and doom in the news about the coronavirus, you know, it's just kind of gets to the point where you just get overloaded with all that sad, bad news. So to me, you know, it's a wake-up call to some people, and it's something that I do all the time. Is I always have a vegetable garden, and I probably always will till I'm so crippled I can't do anything anymore. But it's just wonderful to go out and pick fresh vegetables in your garden. It's wonderful, yummy tomatoes and fresh basil and salad greens. Just to be able to go out and say, I want a salad tonight, and your greens are sitting there waiting for you. So I have a lot of greens that I grow throughout the winter, and I still have a lot of that, but I've just started some lettuce that's good for spring, and some spring onions and radishes and stuff that grows, you know, within 3 weeks or a month I'll be eating salad from my garden. I plant those things directly in the soil, but there's a lot of things that are summer crops that really do much better if you start them before the end of the frost season. You can give them a little kickstart and start them in flats in a little greenhouse. So I'm going to show you my setup today and show you how I do that, even though there's a bazillion different YouTubes out there that will show you how to garden and how to start seeds, but I just thought I'd give you my take on it. I have one of these little fold-up collapsible greenhouses, and it will hold at least 4 flats of seedlings. I've got 2 right now that I sold. On the bottom I've got some rosemary on the end, and then I've got 3 different kinds of lavender, and I'm just rooting those from clippings of other lavender that I've got. And then I've got some rhubarb up here, and I planted this a little while ago, and if we look really carefully in the sun, you can see just the exciting new beginnings of it coming up. And it's supposed to be a really, really sweet red, cherry red color. And that I'm going to put in my little tropical garden. It has wonderful, great big leaves. They're toxic to eat, but the stalks aren't. And the red stems and the huge leaves, it's going to look very exotic. And it comes back year after year, so rhubarb is a good thing. You'll end up dividing it and giving some to friends. And then up here on the next 2 shelves, I have some grow lights, which I just got this year. And I haven't turned those on because they haven't sprouted yet, but I've got tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, stepus, and which is an early kind of tomato, and then a purple tomatillo. And then down here I have some basil, epazote, which is a wonderful, yummy herb that is good for cooking with, putting with beans. It helps not get gas when you eat beans. And then tulsi, which is an adaptogenic herb, meaning that it kind of evens out your mood. So if you have problems with you know, feeling low or feeling anxious or whatever, it's just a really good thing. You make tea out of it. I have underneath these 2 flats of seedlings some grow mats. These are just like little heating mats, and they really jump start summer crops. They get them going really fast. So you just put that under there and it keeps them warm. And then once they sprout, then I will turn on the grow lights, and I'll put those on a time clock, so they'll get, oh, I don't know, probably about 12 hours of light a day. They need to sleep at night. They need some dark. You can't just leave them going all the time, or the plants just end up running out of energy, I think, you know, just like the rest of us. What I use to start seeds is a seedling mix. Normal planting mix usually has large pieces of wood, and it's just too coarse. And it also tends to have fertilizers and stuff that aren't really needed for baby seeds. So I get a seed starting mix, and this year I'm trying a new one. What I'm using this year to start seeds, it's my first time of actually trying some quality product. I usually just go and get whatever cheapest seed starting mix I can get. But this is actually called Light Warrior, a seed starter with mycorrhiza. And it is from Fox Farm, which is a little bit pricey. But, you know, I've been having some problems losing seedlings to damping off, and, you know, just, it's a bummer to get these little seeds that they sprout and then they just turn around and kind of wilt and die. So I thought, well, I'll try something different this year. I'm pretty happy with that. This is what it looks like. It's kind of, you know, got a lot of perlite and peat, and so I'm pretty happy with it so far. Some people say you should just load this right into this 6-packs, and you know, they just scoop it up, get it in there, shake a little bit, and bang, there you go. Put it into your tray, and then water it. And you know, I think that's probably worked okay with the other ones, but quite honestly, you know, I like it packed down a little bit more, and it doesn't soak up well at all. It takes it quite a long time before, so it's important, if you're going to do it that way, to put quite a lot of water in the tray, and it will wick up into the soil, and then, you know, the moisture will create this little rain garden effect with a plastic dome. But generally what I do, and I think I'm going to do that for the rest of these seedlings, is actually get a bucket and let this soak overnight, and then the soil is all completely absorbed. You know, the mix has absorbed a lot of water already, and you can put it in, and it gets the seedlings going right away, because you're not trying to hydrate the soil at the same time. You're trying to get the seeds to get wet and get started germinating. So I'm going to get a bucket. I'm going to put some of this in and just let it soak overnight, and tomorrow I will fill these flats and get some seedlings going. I've got a few more things I want to do, especially some flowers. I don't really have any flowers. And then there's other crops like beans and squash and melons. I just plant those directly in the soil, but I wait until it gets good and warm. So, you know, planting out the seedlings that I'm starting now, I'm figuring usually I put them out right after Mother's Day. For this particular climate, that's a pretty solid frost-free time frame. It might be earlier this year, but I don't want to risk it. I'm going to just go ahead and assume that Mother's Day is it. And I just have to see how the weather feels. You know, if it's really starting to warm up and be warm at night too, then I'll go ahead and plant beans and squash and melons. But you know, you plant those things and it's still cool at night, they just don't get going at all. The seeds can even just rot right in the ground. They might germinate and they'll just sort of sulk along, and they never really get big. And you want them to just shoot out of the ground and get going. And beans especially, they should do that. Melons and squash can be a little bit sluggish, but you know, they're just a little slower. But beans often are just boom, you know. If you plant them and it's warm, they're just happy as can be, and they'll let you know if you planted too early. So I never start those in flats. It's just, you know, you wait for the right time. There's no point in starting them early. They just get going. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'll just soak some of this soil and I'll show you how to fill up the flats and get them started. But I planted enough for me. Usually I only plant 2 or 3 tomato plants for myself, so this whole flat of tomatoes I'm either going to sell through my garden club plant sale, which if it happens this year, it may not. Otherwise I'm going to put a sign out front and people can just drop by and leave some money. And there's plenty of people that, you know, are going to want to have gardens this year. So I'll be supplying the neighbors with some really yummy starts and things they can just put out in a pot on their patio if they want. Tomatoes are so easy. I waited about 24 hours and I had this mix in a, well, it's an old kitty litter box, but anyway, so it's kind of nice and absorbed now. And I'm just going to start filling these 6-packs that came with this particular one. But just scoop some in there. I just find it works a lot better when it's moistened. Everybody's got their own system. There's no right or wrong really, but you know, it's interesting. I did read or someplace about somebody that was planting seeds in a flat, and the seeds weren't doing anything for the longest time, and then her cat came and walked across the flat where the seeds were trying to germinate, and she found out that sorry, had to get the dogs to shut up there. Anyway, so where the cat's footprints impressed on the soil, the seeds started to germinate. And so my lesson from that is that if you leave the soil too light and fluffy, there isn't enough contact with the seed to let it actually stay moist and germinate and send its roots down. So I don't press it real hard, but I do make sure that it's kind of firm in there. So I'm going to finish this and then I'll show you how I plant the seeds. I'm going to make plant tags for all the flowers that I'm going to be planting. And what I do is I have these old window blinds. They make really excellent plant tags. You can make about a bazillion of them, and they cost absolutely nothing. I just cut them into kind of zigzag back and forth, so they're a little more pointed on one end. It doesn't really matter. You can just cut a bunch really quick. And then what I do is I use a pencil to mark it, because pencil won't wash out with watering, And the other problem is I used to use a Sharpie, but Sharpies fade. And so over time, either with sun or just watering, not very long, the Sharpie will, even though it's permanent ink, it will completely disappear on you and you'll lose track of what it was you planted. And that kind of matters if you're planting something that, like different kinds of tomatoes that look real similar in terms of the leaf. You won't be able to tell what kind is what until they start bearing fruit. I'm not going to plant the sunflowers yet. Those are kind of like tomatoes and peppers and that sort of thing. They like hot weather. And I usually direct seed my sunflowers right into the ground. So I've got a couple of different kinds of sunflowers and I am going to save those and plant them about the time I plant my beans. But I'll get started with these and just make some plant tags here. Forget me not. And to start with, I put one in each of the 6 packs. And then if I'm going to be transplanting to a larger pot later, like with tomatoes, I pot them up usually 2 or 3 times into larger and larger pots once they get started. Then I make labels for every single pot. I didn't used to do that. I used to pot them up and just keep them together as a group, but once again, they would get separated from their siblings and I would forget exactly what kind it was or why it was, and so it's better to just, once you repot, go ahead and put it in a label in every single pot that you do. So to plant the seeds, you just, I just have like a wooden chopstick that I use for the 6 packs. Make a little hole, and it's a good idea to kind of take a look at the seeds ahead of time. Now these are actually kind of large seeds. If you have really tiny seeds, you barely want to cover them at all. And it usually does kind of tell on the package how deep to plant, but I'm not going to worry too much. So I usually just drop one in each packet, and then hopefully they all come up, but they don't always. So that's that one, and then you just take it and cover it up lightly with a little soil. Don't want to pack too hard again. And there you go, that's the first one. Now I'm going to do this one just to show you how I do the bigger ones a little bit different. These are zinnias. I'm not really a very big zinnia fan, but I've got the seeds, so I might as well. So here we are with these. And with this, what I do is I make a long trough when you've got a longer cell than the little squares on the 6-pack. This is a 4-pack. And what I do is I look for the best seeds. Some of them are just like wimpy little things. They're obviously unlikely to germinate. But you take ones that look pretty good and healthy, and I put one in each end. And that way, if they do all germinate, you can separate them out. Since these are kind of old seeds, I'm expecting that they aren't going to germinate that well. And I probably won't have really very many of them germinate. So the success rate's a little lower when you've got seeds left over from past years. Yeah, these were for 2017 and it's 2020 now. So, let's see, I'll use this to poke that little seed down in there. And then cover them up. Zinnias are good for picked flowers. They're bright in color. The dome on, and I leave it on until things germinate. And sometimes, you know, there will be a variety of different things germinating at different times. And so you're going to have to just take them out as they germinate and shuffle things around between the flats. So thanks for watching. I hope that helped you a little bit. Not be too scared of starting some seeds. I hope you'll have some success. If not, there's usually people around that are starting gardens and starting seeds, and you can probably find some starts if your seeds just don't work out for some reason. But I would say for a basic setup, you know, you can probably get started for maybe $50 with a few flats and the little greenhouse. Now the seed starting mats are a little more pricey and the lights are more pricey, so you could be getting into $200–300. But if it means you're going to get food for summer, it might be well worth it. I just use this year after year after year, and so it's not a matter that it's money thrown away. These things last for a long time. So I encourage you to give it a shot. I find it just really, really rewarding to put a little seed in the dirt and all of a sudden you get this plant. And with even tomato plants, let me tell you, if I find a good tomato that I bought somewhere and it's really yummy, save the seeds. Because by and large, tomatoes self-pollinate. It's just the structure of the flower is such that it pollinates itself, and you won't get a cross hybrid of some other tomato in there. So if you find a tomato that's like super juicy and good and yummy, that's what I do. I just save year after year. I save my own seeds for my tomatoes. And I've gotten to the point where I have some cherry tomatoes now, and that's all I do for my cherry tomatoes. They are the best. They are so sweet and so flavorful. I don't even know what variety they are. I just came across them and I saved the seeds, and boy, there's just this burst of summer flavor when you bite into one of those. They're just great little snacks, just sweet like candy. And then I have a variety of tomato that I grow year after year called stupice. And most people probably think it's pronounced stupis, but anyway, S-T-U-P-I-C-E. It does really well here in Oregon because it's a short season. And so it does okay. It produces earlier and has sort of little medium-sized fruits that are really good, and they either good for fresh eating or for canning. And what I do is dehydrate my tomatoes by and large, and then reconstitute them and put them in soups or stews, put them on pizza, you name it. They're just great. They don't take up any space at all when you dehydrate. So you find a variety that does well in your area. You might try and track down seed companies in your particular area, because you'll be much more likely to find varieties that do well in your particular climate. Not all things do well. I mean, people on the East Coast have humid, hot, wet summers, and here on the West Coast we tend to have really dry, warm, hot summers, and it's a totally different thing. And here in the Pacific Northwest, our season is not that long, and so we have to find things that will germinate and will actually go on to produce vegetables or fruits within our season here. So, thanks for watching. Don't get bummed about this whole coronavirus thing. I mean, I know if you're personally affected, my heart goes out to you. My dad's 102 years old, and I can't go see him. His retirement home is closed to visitors, and I just hate to think that, you know, I never know. It's just, I'm just glad I gave him a hug. He didn't want me to hug him last time I was there because he was afraid of getting the virus. Anyway, I'm sorry if you are affected. Just don't stress about it. It always helps to get outside, get some fresh air and sunshine, and start something growing, you know? It's a new start. It doesn't, you look around at nature and it is not affected by this at all. The birds are still flying around, the sun still comes up, and the daffodils are blooming, and just try and understand where they are and be like that. So happy day and happy gardening.